Hey, y'all, and welcome to episode 5 of the Muddling Through podcast. My next guest is my good friend, Brian Dobson. We've worked together over the years at JCPenney's and Barnes & Noble. We played D&D together. He's just a really solid dude and a really funny guy. Yeah, we have a good lengthy conversation, and I hope y'all enjoy. So it's strange, like, that kids don't really have the chance to be kids out in the woods, you know?
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know. I guess I grew up in the 80s and 90s where you literally could just go out into the world and it was whatever, right? Like,
be home by dark.
It was be home by the time the streetlights come on, and we'd go have BB gun fights in the woods and shoot BB guns at each other.
Right.
Like at a certain point, like there should have been some oversight there.
Yeah.
So I don't know, fine line. I do wish that my kids had, my kid has kind of that experience where he can go out into the world and just kind of explore and do, and it's okay. Like the boogeyman's not going to come get him, right?
Right.
But at the same time, I guess I have to acknowledge that the world has changed some. And you just have to kind of give your kid good expectations.
Yeah.
What's good behavior and what's bad behavior, and hopefully you've done a good job of teaching them right and wrong, and they'll follow the right path.
They'll figure it out.
It's all kind of a crapshoot.
No, fair enough. Do you think the world's changed? Like, do you think the world is more dangerous, or that we're just inundated with all the worst news you could possibly hear, at any given time?
Well, as someone who's been in the political world and has been part of the machine, it's definitely how much we hear about it. I mean, bad stuff has always happened, right?
Right.
I mean, there's no time in history where the things that happen now weren't happening then, right? Like, it always happened.
You just didn't hear about it.
You didn't hear about it, right? Now we hear about everything. Now we know what Kim Kardashian had for breakfast. Like, we definitely don't need to know that bullshit.
Yeah, for sure.
But, we know everything else, right? Yeah. So you hear everything. And the news benefits from, the news outlets, no matter who you are or what bent you follow. Like, every news outlet gets a benefit from sensationalizing things, right?
They gotta get the viewers, and so
yeah.
it's gotta be the worst thing that's ever happened.
Yeah. Well, it's when you live in a world of emergencies, when everything's an emergency, nothing becomes an emergency, right?
Exactly.
So they have to keep hyping the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, or people just get complacent, which I would argue that most Americans are pretty complacent when it comes to emergencies.
Right.
I mean, how many stories of, tragic mass shootings, and people are like, oh, what's that? I don't know. Like, people are getting shot in the other room, but you're still having your dinner, or there's countless stories of where people they know there's some sort of danger, but they just ignore it, right? Because it would inconvenience them or something.
Right. It's this happens more supposedly in more densely populated areas because they're more likely to assume that someone else is going to take care of it.
Right. Well, I mean, how many times do you hear a car alarm go off and go, damn, I wish that thing would stop?
Right.
Look, every single time.
Hey, maybe someone, set off their car alarm so they wouldn't get, mugged.
Right.
Or worse.
That's like a rape whistle. You're
exactly.
Who's blowing a whistle? That's just so weird.
That's so rude. Can't believe they're blowing a whistle at 3 o'clock in the morning.
It's messed up, Gordon.
Yep. Yeah. That's me. Yeah, no, it's a weird old world out there.
Yeah, and it just gets weirder. It really does. I don't know. I could go on a whole tirade about why I think the world is weird, but that's just one man's opinion. So.
I mean, we're here for opinions.
Well.
So, you've seen a bit of the world.
A little bit. I have been fortunate and unfortunate to see some of it, some of the good parts, some of the bad parts, some in between. I have been to, most recently, I had a trip to China, which is very exciting for me.
Yeah.
I never thought that I would make it to China in my life, but get to check that one off the old bucket list, which was fun. I was very nervous when I was first getting ready to go. I had to get a visa and I had to get approvals, and you have to have the company write a letter to the Chinese government to vouch for you, and then you have to have somebody else who isn't a relative of yours here in the United States write a letter on your behalf to the Chinese government so that you can get a visa, right? So, long story short, I got a visa, but I was like, all right, it's China. I'm prior military. I am priorly politically involved, right? So you just never know what's out there. And I'm going to a communist country. This should be fun. So I made a point of making sure that I shut my damn mouth. Really, is what I was focused on was just go and focus on what I've got to do, and don't leave my hotel unless I've got someone who one of our escorts with us, and just don't put myself out there. Like I've been to Europe a few times, and I was in Munich and was out just randomly walking the streets at like 2:00 in the morning because, well, I had come out of the bar and I was a little inebriated, but I felt like I could do that. I felt like I could go out and see the city that was still alive, right? It was, historic Munich, and we were in part of the historic district down there, and so it was really neat, but I felt totally fine to do it.
Yeah.
I didn't feel comfortable leaving my hotel in broad daylight in Shanghai.
Right.
It's just a different world, right? And it may have been totally safe. I don't know. But I wasn't really willing to take that chance.
For sure.
So that was fun. That was a new experience. I think I have to go back again soon, for work. So
does a lot of the sort of steps you had to take to go there the first time, does it not carry over, but does it make it easier to go back the second time?
It actually does carry over. So I ended up getting a visa that's for business, so it's like 10 years.
Oh, okay.
So for the next 10 years, I can go as much as I want, but I can only stay up to 60 days.
Gotcha.
So, if I stay more than 60 days, they can throw me in jail and whatnot. But I was only there for a week, so I mean, it was, I guess, in the terms of going halfway around the world, it was kind of a quick turnaround.
Right.
Because it is 12 hours difference, it's quite jarring on your system to begin with. But it was okay. It was alright.
How long were you in Munich?
I was only in Munich for like 2 days.
Okay.
I went before my son was born, my wife, my brother, and my sister and I decided that we wanted to do New Year's in Europe. So the day after Christmas, we got on a flight and went to Austria, and we went to St. Anton, and we went skiing in the Alps for a couple of days, and stayed there. That was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
If you ever get a chance to go, I think it'd be even nicer in the summer. You're in this narrow valley, and there's just Alps just climb thousands of feet on either side, and you've got these little, like St. Anton is considered a town, right? It's kind of like it's a resort town.
Yeah.
But we stayed in a little hamlet, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes down the road, and this little bed and breakfast on the side of the mountain. It was like tucked into the side of the mountain, and we stayed there, and it was amazing. It was like this woman and her husband owned it and ran it, and they had a few different rooms. I think there was maybe half a dozen rooms or something in the whole place. You couldn't even eat there. You had to go down into the valley to like the town center, to the one other hotel in town that happened to have a restaurant attached to it. That was the only restaurant in town. So you go in, and it's in like I'll call it the basement. It's kind of like the sub first floor.
Sure.
Like it was like half sunken.
Yeah.
And so you kind of go down in, and you feel like you're in someone's like basement. You're like, what? And then like the door opened, and this woman came out, and you could see that there was a bar in there.
Yeah.
And there's seating and everything. So we went in, and we were, so most people in Europe speak their native language and English. We as Americans only speak English. So luckily they all speak this, they can communicate with us. So we went in and got some drinks and whatever, and got to know the woman who owns the place, because the woman who owned the place was still running the bar, and she was running the kitchen at the same time. And So getting food took a while, but
Right.
when the food did come out, it was absolutely amazing. I got this they took a chicken breast and they pounded it maybe half inch, quarter inch thick.
Mhm.
It ended up being the size of a plate.
Okay.
And they wrapped the whole thing in bacon. Just
Alright.
bacon on bacon on bacon. And then they deep fried it. So it was this chicken bacon fried pancake. It was and I had these green beans and mashed potatoes, and it was out of this fucking world. It was delicious. I don't know. I've tried to replicate it here.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I don't know how that little old woman did it, but she freaking made some great goddamn food.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we stayed in that little town, and then we went to Innsbruck for a couple days, which is the Olympics were there in some point. God, I don't even know. I feel like it was the 90s. But at one point, Innsbruck had the Winter Olympics.
Mm.
So you could see on the side of the mountain in Innsbruck, part of the high jumps and things like that, and the other ski courses and stuff from when the Olympics were there.
Mm.
So that was interesting. It's a pretty old city. That's in Austria. Mm. Then we went across the border to, was that in Austria? Yeah. I know, I'm all mixed up. God, that was so long ago. Then we went to Munich, and we went to Salzburg. So we ended up doing Salzburg for New Year's Eve. So if you ever go, where's the craziest place you can think of where they shoot off fireworks here in the state or the country?
I don't know, probably down south somewhere. I would imagine. I mean, maybe Disney.
Maybe Disney. Okay, so Disney. Yeah, if you've ever been to Disney World, they set off a lot of fireworks.
Yeah.
Now take that and scale it to the size of a city of millions of people who are all drunk, and they're all shooting up their own fireworks.
Okay.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I've never seen so many fireworks set up. They started shooting them off at 7 o'clock at night.
Okay.
They didn't stop until 2 in the morning.
Damn.
The entire city was just random pocket. It was everybody in the city had fireworks.
Yeah.
So the entire city was a fireworks show. Then the city of Salzburg put on a fireworks show from Salzburg Castle. Okay. Salzburg's known for its castle at the top of the bluff, and it's this famous thing. It's really pretty. But they set off a fireworks show. It lasted 10 minutes. And it was total shit.
Yeah.
Compared to everything else, it was total shit. I'm sure it would have been nice if it was on its own.
Right.
It wasn't on its own.
Not compared to
everything. But so we found, I ended up getting food poisoning the day before.
As you do.
Never eat straight sausage or hot dogs while you're in Salzburg.
All right.
You get food poisoning.
Duly noted.
It was delicious, but I really suffered for the next week.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to go out. And my brother and sister were like, "You're fucking stupid. You came around the world to have New Year's Eve, in Salzburg, in Europe, this whole big thing. Let's go." And I'm like, "I'm really not feeling well." And they're like, "I don't care if you shit yourself.
Yeah.
I don't give a damn. You're coming." You're
gonna regret it.
So luckily, we went and kind of jump forward a little bit. I didn't feel bad all night long. Mm-hmm. I felt perfect all night long. The next day, I felt like total fucking dog shit.
Yeah.
So that night, I'm really glad that I went because I felt fine. Yeah. I felt totally fine for that 6 hours.
You just postponed it and stacked it on.
Oh yeah, it was totally stacked because it was 2 o'clock, maybe 3 o'clock the next morning. Mm-hmm. It was my body was like, "You owe us. The tab is due," and it was not pretty. But we found our way up. So Salzburg has these hills and mountains, and the castle's built on the highest part, and then on the lower part they have a bunch of buildings are all built in around the old town. Mm-hmm. And we found our way up onto one of these outcroppings of buildings. I have no idea what the building was that was built there. Mm-hmm. And then it had this stone kind of patio that looked out over the city.
Yeah.
We found our way up there. I have no idea how we got there, right? We just were walking. We're let's try to get up. Let's go up. So we just kept taking walkways, and all of a sudden we're standing there, and it was almost like it was like a bar or something. It was some sort of house that they're having a party, or I don't know if it was a bar. I didn't go in, never did. Like I stood outside all night in the rain, like looking at the fireworks, and but my sister went in at one point and came back with like cups of mulled wine, like boiling hot mulled wine.
Right.
Like it spilt on my glove and I felt it through the glove, and I was like, "That is hot." My brother, of course, then I hear my brother scream because he spilt on his bare hand, and he's like, "I'm pretty sure I just got burnt," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna drink this tar," because I wasn't really drinking because I was like, I haven't felt well. I don't want to like. I don't want to put anything in to disturb the balance, right? So like I was like, okay, yeah, I tasted it.
Yeah.
Like, let me go melt this tree down.
Yeah.
But as you're standing there, you could see the city of Salzburg just fireworks. But where you were high enough that you could see like 3 or 4 other towns in the distance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's really weird. It's not like here where if you get onto a high building, you can see like the next town over. Like, we have too many trees.
Yeah.
And our elevation is so irregular around here. The elevation around Salzburg is like either a mountain or like flatland.
Okay.
So we were standing on the side of a hill,
mm-hmm.
and you could see, I swear to God, you could see at least 3 towns away. Like, and they were just, you could see them, little pockets of light in the distance. And then you'd see these little puffs of light, of
like little
fireworks going off above them. But that lasted all night too. Right. It was ridiculous. It was one of the most entertaining and recklessly dangerous, useless things I've ever done. Because all the people that were in that house, that I have no idea whose house it was or what the hell was going on, but they would come out and they would launch fireworks off of their balcony, right? And they, at one point, they dropped it and it like started exploding at their feet. So we're watching it. One guy, it exploded and he jumped off the balcony onto the ground, which was like maybe 8 feet. But he was like, I was like, what in the? And then because I saw him jump and I was like, what is this dude doing? Boom! And I'm like, oh, yeah, he didn't want to die. All right. And then like off to our right, at one point, I watched they were shooting fireworks up, and then they were getting a little bit lower and a little bit lower. Then they started launching them onto the roofs of the houses below them. And I was like, these guys are insane. Yeah. They're literally just launching fireworks down at the houses below them. It was an experience that, again, I highly recommend.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, like, people think that Americans are crazy. Like, what
no, we have far too many laws and regulations for that.
Right.
And we have too many people who would be like, oh, well, what are you doing? Oh, you're not doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to run tell, right? We got too many busybodies in the United States. Right? Instead of coming over and be like, hey, that looks like fun, or just leaving it be, right? Like, not my business, right? No. Somebody's got to say something or post about something.
Yeah. Or passive-aggressive social media.
Or just plain aggressive social media.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right? That's pretty much what you get nowadays. Yeah. I swear social media has been the death of civil conversation.
For sure.
Because it's all 140 characters or less, and I need to make my point now, and I don't have time to have a discussion with you because I need to be right, and I need to tell my point, right? Even if you're not thinking like I need to be right, it's like no, I need to get my point across. Maybe it's not about your point. Maybe it's about like the ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
And you also have like the downside of, or you have like the anonymity factor, where you are willing to say things to a complete stranger that you're never going to see again, that you would never say to someone's face.
Oh yeah, you would never say half the stuff you say on the internet to someone's face.
And like you can never get tone. So like you're inferring tone from what they're saying, and they're inferring tone from what you're saying, and it could be completely innocuous. Right. But like when you're reading it, you're just like, what the hell did you just say to me?
Right.
Like. Oh,
right. And the worst is when somebody puts like a face, like an emoji in there. Yeah. Well, how I interpret emoji may be totally different than how you interpret that emoji. 100%. It's subjective as well.
Right.
Like there's a general idea of like a super smiley face is a smiley face, right? A frown face is sad, right?
Yep.
But there are a lot more emojis than happy or sad.
Right.
Right? There's a whole range of ones in the middle, and all the ones with the eyes, like oh, is he rolling his eyes or is he looking at something, right?
Yep.
They can be interpreted many different ways.
And even like the happier sad one is like, is he mocking me? Or like,
Right.
what's going on here? Like,
Right.
I don't really know what he's trying to say.
Right. Yeah, so it's, I don't know. I try not to engage people online because you just can't. You just don't know. Like,
Right.
and it's just not worth my effort to get into a Facebook argument with somebody that I knew in high school. Like, I'm pretty sure that we're going on 20 years since I've been in high school, so I don't need to like impress you. I don't need to have you see my way, right? Like, I just need you to not be part of my existence anymore. So unfollow. Like, bye. If I post something online and someone comments on it, I try not to. It doesn't always work. I try not to respond, right? Because then what's it gonna get me, right? If that person really wants to have a conversation with me, guess what? They know how to reach me elsewise.
Yeah.
Like, call me, right? All those people have my phone number. Call me. Or I'll see you in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Like, we'll talk about it then.
Right.
Right? I don't need to engage online. It's just
nothing good.
I spent too many years just arguing with people that, like, no, like, doing the same thing I said. Well, no, I need to make my point. Like, you're not hearing me. They hear me. They just don't give a fuck. Right? Like, that's not their opinion, so they don't really care. Right? That's just the way it works, I think.
Yeah.
Oh.
And at a certain point, like, proving your argument, like giving the evidence, is only going to entrench them further into the thing they've already decided is correct.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, why even bother at that point?
Yeah. Most certainly.
Are you still playing with those guys?
Yeah. We still we play once a month usually.
Yeah.
And then so the same Manch group is still there. Ian bought a house in Goffstown.
Yeah.
So we play there. So it's now the Manch group in Goffstown.
Okay. Sure.
And then I play with Ian. He plays in the game that I run at my house that I started with my wife.
Yeah.
So there's 6 players in that group.
Yeah.
So there's 5 of us in the Goffstown group and 6 in the Nottingham group. So the groups are pretty big, but it's good. I love the fact that the people that I know, and I've been able to keep bringing more people into the game and expanding that, at least what I consider to be a joy in other people.
Yeah. It's cool that you're able to rope Abby into it, because like for the longest time she was just kind of on the periphery.
Yeah, she was like, no, and I was just like, oh, you should try, you should check it out, like you should do this. And then a friend of ours that we went to high school with, his name is Josh, he wanted to play a game, and I said, okay, well, I can probably get my friend Matt, and I don't know, I'll see if I can get somebody else. And so I got Ian, and then I told Abby, I said, all right, Josh really wants to try it. Matt's going to play. Ian's going to play. Like, Ian knows all the rules just like I do. Like, he's going to be totally there to help you. And she was like, fine. So then she started playing, and we've been playing that game for over 2 years now.
Okay.
So it's, and she's totally vested, and we've brought in a couple other players, and, because we brought in 2 other players after that, because that was 4 to start with. So, and we've had other friends, like Marcus come and played one-off characters, and we've had Eric's wife came and played. Eric plays in that group. I don't know if you remember Eric from Barnes.
Gustafson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He plays in the Manch group, and he plays in the one I run. And then his wife came and played for a little while, and we've had a couple other people come in and out, and so it's fun. It's nice to kind of share it with people and get them to like it. So
yeah, that's always been like I've run off and on for like I don't know, like the past 4 or 5 years. But the thing that I like doing the most is introducing new people to the game.
Yeah.
Like after you get to a certain point, you're just like, I end up kind of losing interest a lot of time depending on what adventure I'm running.
Oh yeah.
But overall, like anytime I know someone who has never played but wants to play, I'm like, oh, I can set that up for you. Like, I love introducing new players to D&D.
Yeah, it's fun. I just actually introduced a new individual. So it's a friend of my sister's who is, I think she's like 45. And Abby and I were talking about it one day to her, and Abby was talking about all the crazy stuff she gets to do, you know, in the game that she can't do in real life. And she was like, that sounds great. Let's get some drinks and let's go play. So I actually set up a game for her to play, and Abby and Matt played as well, and I think we spent 5-6 hours playing, and she loved it. It was great, and I was like, it's so interesting. Like somebody who I thought would never ever, you know, she's a nurse practitioner, she's just a nurse, you know, and she's a little bit older, and so it was very interesting to see her kind of play and really like it.
And like get it.
And get it, right? Like, oh, this is fun. Like, oh, I get to do, like, I want to do this thing. And it's like, all right, well, here, you got to try to do it. And she's like, oh, I try to do it. I'm like, well, you try to do this, and well, that didn't happen. And she's like, oh, well, fuck that. Like, she's like, well, I go do this. And it's like, all right, well, go try that.
Yeah,
and so, you know, it's interesting to see people's imaginations kind of whirl up. And then more than just their imagination, their possibilities, right? Like, all right, like, this person isn't me. This person has other abilities and skills, right? And they can go do other things. But what can they do? Let's push that to the limit, right? And see what they can do. So that's always fun. It's I don't know, D&D is it's a very versatile game, and depending on who you are and kind of what your thing is you can usually fit into D&D pretty easily.
Yeah, it's about getting the right people to play with.
Yeah. I mean, you can definitely get some freaking wing rats, but
or just in a group where the play styles are wildly varied.
Oh yeah, that's always interesting. But
yeah,
usually if you play with your friends, you and your friends are already pretty similar to one another. That, you know, in a group of friends playing, you don't usually see that a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, kind of iron up the differences.
Yeah, and I mean, you've already ironed out a lot of the social interactions to begin with, right? Like, you all know how to interact with each other socially, right? And that just naturally transitions to the game, where the person who's usually quiet in the group is usually quiet in the game, right? Or the person who is the facilitator or the instigator, like, they're going to be the same person in the game,
right? So
you're just kind of bringing your already established personalities and connections to the table, which is nice. The trick is when you go to play with people you've never met, because you just don't know how you're going to interact with them.
Yeah.
And that, like, so I tried to play, I should say, the Adventurers League. You know, you go to I would go to Stairway to Heaven Comics in Portsmouth.
Spend some time there.
And I was just there this weekend, so I've put a lot of money into that place. But I think it's one of the nicer ones around. But I would go and I would play, and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Like, I love the game, but I didn't like playing there. For one, it was only pre-made adventures.
Yeah.
And you only got a little bit. You really only kind of got a little bit in, a little bit in, a little bit in. You never really made a lot of progress. And then two, it was frustrating because people who would, like, my thought of it is, if you come in and you play, you're there when you start and you leave when it ends. You don't come in the middle or leave like halfway through.
Yeah.
Like, I get it that the game is designed to be able to do that, but I just don't like it. It's a personal pet peeve.
Yeah. Like it breaks the narrative.
It breaks the narrative, right? It pulls you out of the game, but it also, for me at least, it was the guy who was like the most obnoxious guy who was always late.
Yeah.
He'd always come in like halfway through, and he wouldn't bring a character sheet. He wouldn't bring dice. He would just show up and be like, my character's there, and my character can do these things. And I'm like, how do you know that? And he's like, I just know. And like, he would do things and he would say things, and the guy running the game would just let him do it. And I'm like, I know for a fact that you're not allowed to do that. Like, that's not how that works. No, you're adding the wrong numbers. Like, you didn't know what your attack bonus was. because you don't remember what your dex mod was,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, then he goes, it's just +6. I'm like, well, your proficiency modifier is only +2,
Mm-hmm.
so it's probably not. I don't think you have an 18 dex to start with.
Probably not.
Probably not. Because we're only level 2 characters, so
Yeah,
I was
no,
like,
definitely not. This is Adventurers League.
right. So I was like, all right, I get it. He's trying to have his fun, but it was just frustrating me because, and then at the end, they would divvy up the monsters you killed, right? And every monster has an experience level,
Right.
and then they say, you know, in those pre-made adventures, like all of them that Wizards of the Coast puts out, they say, well, if you do this, this, and this, it should be worth this much XP. Well, at the end of the night, they would say, okay, well, you did X, Y, and Z, and you killed these many monsters, and it equals this much XP.
Yeah.
Then they look at the table and they say, well, there's 6 people at the table, divided by 6, right? Well, when the game started, there was only 3 of us at the table.
Yeah.
Right? And we went through half of this without the other 3 people, right? Or whatever. There was 3 of us to start, and then this guy came, and there was 4 of us. So he got equal experience, even though he was only here for half of it.
Right.
And I was like, that's just so frustrating to me.
Yeah.
Like, just on a personal level, like, I can't, like, I get it. It's a game. It really doesn't mean anything at all.
And it's supposed to be, like, all-inclusive, and everyone's supposed to have a good time, but, like...
Well, you didn't earn that shit, right? Like, you didn't earn it. What are you doing? Like,
you
why
didn't
are
put the work in?
Right? Like, because, and of course, at one point, I was level 2.
Yeah.
And I was 3 experience away from being level 3. And I was like, can I just bump that up?
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, no, you can't do that.
We don't do that here.
Right. Like, you have to, like, because you have to put everything on a piece, you have to, like, document everything that you do in there.
Every little item.
Every little item, every little bit of experience. It has to be documented. And I'm like, I can't have 3 experience. Like, that guy wasn't here for half of it, but he got all the experience that I got, the same amount. Can I have 3 of his?
Yeah.
Like, nope, can't do that. You gotta wait till after next week's game. And I'm like, so I gotta go through a whole other week. By the way, we're playing an adventure that's supposed to be from levels 3 to 5, and I came in at level 1, because you have to start at level 1 in Adventurers League. And I'm level 2, I'm like, so I have to go through a whole nother week of being under-leveled again, like way under-leveled. I should be level 4 at this part in this adventure. Like, I played this adventure. I know where I'm supposed to be. No. And I was like, you know what? It's just not my kind of fun.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not worth it.
Right? Sure, that's somebody's fun. It just wasn't mine.
Right.
So I stopped playing that. I was like, nah. I mean, my wife wasn't mad because I was around again on Thursday nights. But,
So, I mean, you get your time in, both as a DM. One of the things I really appreciated, because I was only in your game for how long? How long after I joined were you running it for? Was it only like 4 or 5 sessions?
I don't. Good Lord, that was so long ago.
Wasn't it? It was like 5 years ago.
You will be happy to know that your character has become a recurring NPC bad guy.
Okay. Excellent.
Who's just kind of like the campy bad guy who shows up and he's like, you're like, it's that guy, and he like disappears. It's very Scooby-Doo-esque.
All right.
I don't know. I think I ran that.
So you ran
I ran that for a while after you left.
You ran the mercenary one, and then Ian was running the like quote unquote evil campaign where we were bad guys that were trying to
Oh yeah.
So like, well, what I was saying was one of the things I really appreciated about you was like when you do something, you go all out. So like, all of the maps, you had like everything like multi-layered, and like you had a map for every scenario that we found ourselves in, and really kind of busted things out. And like some of the maps were really detailed. Like, you went high end detail on one of the towers that we ended up like not using at all, and then the castle that we invaded like towards the end.
Oh yeah, that was great. Yeah, that was awesome.
That was really wild. Did you find that, or did you like design that?
No, I designed it. I just taped a bunch of large strips of paper together.
Yeah.
And just started gridding it out and said, no, I want this to be here. I want this over here. I mean, I probably found something that was close to that
Mhm.
and was like, well, I don't like this, and I'll erase this, and I'll add something over here. But it wasn't a direct carbon copy of somebody else's work. So I've even you should see it now. I got to the point where I'm the game I'm running now for the Nottingham group for my wife. We've been playing, like I said, for about 2 years. Yeah, just over 2 years now. Started at level 1. They just hit level 11.
Yeah.
And I made a world map. So I started with like a region, and I used a program called Hexographer to make that little region, and then I built like a continent.
Yeah.
And then multiple continents, and then I took it and I cropped it to the one big continent and printed it out on a poster board and bought a poster frame.
Yeah.
And like gave it to my party. I was like, "Here's your world," and they were like, "Oh, this is great."
That's awesome.
And then, so then I've taken it even farther, and I started making my own 3D terrain. So I started making like foam craft terrains and tile systems and different.
Right.
Oh yeah, I've got a big tub of things, and
you're like a one-man Dwarven Forge kind of deal.
Kinda, yeah. I kind of on the same line as, I don't know if you watch or anybody knows of like Black Magic Craft on YouTube, Wylock's Armory, DM Scotty.
I'm not super familiar, but
they're all crafting.
Yeah.
I really like Black Magic Craft. He's a guy from Winnipeg, Canada. Seems like a very kind of calm, cool, relaxed kind of guy. He makes different pieces of terrain out of foam, and he kind of bases it all off like a 3x3 tile.
Yeah. That
you then grid, so it's like a 9x9 grid tile.
Yeah.
And then you can lay them out however you want. So if you're like, oh, well, you're in a castle, like here's a hallway, like, and here's a bunch of stuff, and then of course you can't really get everything with those, like they're because they're static shapes.
Right.
Like you kind of run out of like, well, I want this to curve and I want this to do this and whatever, or I just don't have enough tiles to like lay everything out. I have some nice big size dry erase mats that have like they got like printed designs on it, like one's stone, one's grass, one's just white, and one's like tan, like paper, like aged paper look.
Yeah.
So I use those to like supplement, and sometimes I'll put the mat down and I'll say, okay, well, like they just had this big battle a couple weeks ago against a Garisto, and this. So I drew like the temple they were in, this cathedral, and on dry erase, and then I added I had 3D pillars. I put pillars in, and there was an altar, so I had an altar and all this other stuff. So it kind of brings the 2D world up a little bit.
Yeah.
And you add some elements. So I like to mix and match them and things like that. So yeah, I really kind of went down the rabbit hole with that. But it's been fun, and I don't know. For me, it adds a little bit to the game where instead of just saying, okay, well, you walk into this room, okay, well, I draw it here. It's kind of the castle map from that last battle, and just kind of taking it up a little bit, taking it up a notch. So that's fun. I enjoy it. It really kind of, for one, it gives me something to do. It's a craft. It's a hobby. It's it's something to do. But I also like to when I describe the room to my players and I say, this is what it looks like and this happens, and they're like, okay. And then I put it on the table and they're like, oh my God.
Oh man.
Like there's a certain bit of joy that I get out of that. So not only do I get to run the game, but I get to kind of facilitate the story for everybody. I kind of get to bring the world alive to them a little bit too, which is fun. So, yeah.
How do you find that your DM skills have kind of changed, or been? How have you refined them as you've gone along?
I think they've gotten a lot better. I think that the game that you played in was the first game I've ever DM'd.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of just kind of fumbling through it. And at this point, I still fumble through it, but I've gotten good enough to improvise things that all of my players tell me regularly, that was great. I never expected that to happen. And I'll be like, I had no idea that was going to happen.
Yeah.
I just made that up.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, no way, you just made that up? Like, I just let my imagination run wild, and I think that's what I've gotten better at, is just taking what I already have in my head as an imagination and just saying it.
Yeah.
Like, well, I'm in this town, what do I see? Well, how do I imagine it? That's what it is. Right? It's the same thing like if you read any fantasy novels or you read any mystery novels, right? And they describe the streets and what it smells like and the sounds and all these things. That's how the author imagined it, right? So when I, as a DM, talk about the world that they're in, that's how I imagined it. So that's what it is. That it's real to me.
Yeah.
So instead of having my imagination, but trying to force a different, like, this is how I imagine it, but well, that really wouldn't be how it is. Well, that is how it is. That's how you, as the author, as the creator, imagined it. So that's how it is.
Right.
But I've also gotten a lot better at preparing, at writing out more details, and just knowing what I need to prepare versus what I don't need to. My players, one of my players, his character only has one arm. Right?
Okay.
His backstory goes into how he lost his arm. So he's a warlock, and he kind of just uses Eldritch Blast, and he has one hand, one arm. Well, the players were like, we need to get you another arm. Like, let's figure out if that's a thing.
Yeah.
And so my players were like, all right, we're in a big city now. Let's look around and see if we can find somebody who may know something about this, right? If it's possible.
Yeah.
Well, they rolled Eric's character is ungodly. He's a arcane trickster, rogue, and a wizard. He's
all right.
cross-classed.
Yeah. That's a brutal combination.
Well, he's been doing really well at it. He also has the feat luck, or lucky, so he gets to reroll, and he's a divination wizard. So he is like, I don't want that. I don't want it to be this way. It's going to be this way.
Is he a halfling as well?
No, he's a human.
Oh, okay.
Oh god, that would be terrible.
Wouldn't it?
Oh god, I'd be like, no, you're the worst halfling in history. You have to take once.
Yeah, I have a divination wizard lucky halfling in my Curse of God group.
Oh yeah, it's terrible. Well, they went and looked around.
Yeah.
And so he has like a plus 11 or something to investigate. So I was like, roll investigation check. And they all heads shift down the table because he sits at the end.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right. So he rolls and he's like, it's a 32. And I'm like, what? Like, okay. So you spend half the day traveling the city, asking people in the different, the armory streets and the smithies, and you find a tinkerer who's got like a cousin who knows this guy who's a bit crazy, but he may be able to help you.
Yeah.
So they end up in like this back alley of one of the fairly decent parts of town, and like they're walking up to this door that's got this sign that's on one chain and it's swinging in the wind, and it's so old they can't really figure out what it is. And the door like kind of blows open a little bit, and this like smoke comes piling out.
Yeah.
But nothing else. Like there's just like this puff of smoke, and they go in, and I described this. They come into this room that's maybe 20 feet on a length and 10 feet wide, and it's just completely filled with crap.
Yeah. Like
books, chairs, desks. It's all stacked on one another. Like there's this and of course there's this scent of this acrid scent of acids, and you're pretty sure that was powder that just exploded. Like there's that smell in the air, and and so I explain how they kind of have to weave their way through this little room, and they get to the back, and they come face to face with this gnome who's totally crazy.
Yeah.
Who's hopped up on drugs.
Right.
And because every other sentence the guy says, he stops and snorts a line of something off his hand and puts this little thing away, and he's just crazy.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't even remember the voice I used. I tried to use this crazy what I don't know what just silly voice, and so they're like, so our friend lost an arm, and my friend Jay, whose character Deku only has one arm, he's like, oh my god, what happened? and like freaks. So they roll like he's purposely trying to deceive the guy to like freak him out, which he does because they rolled like crap. And the guy was like, "Oh my god, what happened to your arm?" Like, and he's like, "All right, well I can build you an arm, right? But you're gonna have to get me a live fairy to do it because it's part of the ritual. Like, I can do it, but we gotta kill a fairy."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Well," and he's like, "No, it's great. He's like, it's great. So what we do is we kill it, right? And then we like shove the body into the arm. It's great. And then we drink the blood. Well, you drink the blood, and everybody's kind of like, what? And he's like, "No, I'm just fucking with you. Like, I mean, we gotta kill it. You can drink the blood if you want to, but I'm just fucking with you." It's like, so I just went on this like tirade of like, what would a totally coke-addled, like, kind of evil genius gnome who builds automatrons like do or act like?
Right.
I made it all up on the spot, 100% made it up. Like even the story that I'm telling you isn't even completely accurate to what I said because I don't recall everything I said and did.
Yeah.
It's totally made up.
It was just like in the moment, stream of consciousness. So
Yep.
Just put it out
Right.
there.
I had this picture in my mind of what this guy's workshop looked like and how he was like just kind of crazy eyed and like of course all the smoke came from the thing that just it blew up in his face, so like he's got like burn marks and like soot and like part of his beard's on fire and he's just like, what? I don't know. Like, so he just silly. So a couple hours later we finished for the night and they were like, "That was great. Like, that guy was awesome. Like, I can't believe." They're like, "Can we find a fairy? Do we want to kill a fairy? Like, is your arm worth it?" And Gineku's like, "I could use an arm and I don't really care about a fairy, so let's go kill a thing."
Yeah.
Well, they haven't gone to look for a fairy yet. They've been a little sidetracked, but then they were like, "That was great. Like, how did you like know we were gonna do that?" I was like, "I had no fucking clue you guys were gonna do that. You guys were like, we're walking down the street and left turn." Like, what? Like, as a DM, you have to be okay with the randomness that comes out of your players, right? Because one thing that I've come to accept is that I'm one mind, and there's 6 other minds at the table, and Ian. Ian by himself would outwit me in a moment.
Yeah,
but you put all of them together, and they just come up with the craziest shit. And they were like, "You made that up all on the spot?" I was like, "Yeah, totally. Like, I just wanted to swing it." And they were like, "That was amazing. That was like they." One of the guys, Josh, said to me, he goes, "I couldn't have had a better experience in a crazy drug-addled gnome's home."
Yeah.
Like that was amazing. And I was like that's the stuff that you're like, all right. Like, I keep doing this. Right? There's the feels right there. I like it. So, yeah. I'd like to think that I get better. Or maybe I'm just better at bullshitting than I was. I don't know. We'll see. I've got a better idea of where I want my story to go. So when I bullshit, I just bullshit in that direction.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're going to go that way. Well, I don't know.
Not sure how we get there. Putting tracks down.
Put tracks down. There's a river. I don't know. Would go under it. Like with the tunnel? No, we'll just lay the tracks in the bottom. Let's just keep going. Yeah. No, it's been fun. It's interesting. But I'm glad to hear that you're still DMing yourself.
Yeah.
You said you're doing Curse of Strahd.
So yeah, that's pretty wild. I feel like I'm not really properly emphasizing how like creepy and like morbid it's supposed to be. I really want to impress upon my players like how just like bleak like things are, and have it kind of like affect their characters and like what they're doing. Like they all seem pretty sanguine about like, yeah, we're in Barovia, we'd rather not be, we're gonna see if we can get out, but like overall this is kind of an underwhelming experience.
Right.
And like they're all having a good time, but I'm not sure that I'm conveying like what I want to. All but one of the characters are like the second go around, because like they got into basically a TPK.
Oh.
Because they ran into like this coffin maker's shop that had vampire spawn in the attic, and one of the characters decided to investigate on his own, so he got attacked. So he was basically tied up for an entire like 3 or 4 rounds, and then everyone else showed up, and like they had, I think, no cleric, and they didn't have a paladin, and so like they're all these characters that are relatively effective because like I gave them some magic items and started them off at 3rd level or whatever. But certainly not an ideal party like suited for dealing with undead.
Right.
You know,
No
especially
clerics? Come on.
like you're in Barovia, you need clerics.
Right.
So like
Well, we had 3 bards. We were ready. We were ready.
so they had a bard, a warlock, a fighter. What else do they have? They had 2 fighters. One of the fighters survived. And then I forget what the 5th character is playing. I don't really know. Anyway, so like after those characters died, like miserably, they're like, okay, we're gonna sort this one out. So now they're rocking the fighter that survived, an arcane archer. They've got a divination wizard, a life cleric, a vengeance paladin, and a it's not a zealot barbarian. It's a storm herald.
Oh, okay.
So they got a barbarian, and the barbarian and the paladin got turned into werewolves, which I was like really stringing along, like they hadn't actually turned yet. I was kind of like trying to like give them little, like everyone knew because we were rolling out in the open, and like I didn't think to, gather all their saving throws and like roll for them for that encounter, which would have been fantastic. And just like you have no idea, like you don't know why he's rolling, like you don't know if anything happened. All of a sudden, you don't take damage from physical weapons, and like your hearing's all messed up, and like you want your steak rare, like all this sort of thing, and that's all the stuff I was kind of peppering in, but it didn't have the impact, because like they were all aware of it.
Yeah.
And then I finally had like them turn, but like the cleric was ready with remove curse, and he's like, okay, that one's done. We're gonna like really hammer away at the next one. And then when he drops, like we'll take a long rest, like tie him up, take a long rest, and then remove curse from the other one. So it didn't really have quite the impact that you're really hoping for.
Right.
I don't know. Curse of Strahd is like super complicated.
I've heard. I've never played it.
The castle is like, I'm dreading the castle just because it's like got like 15 different layers and like these massive rooms, and every square is it's nuts. I ran them through. There's like this one like smaller castle that's not even that complicated, but even then it's like flipping back and forth between the pages and like reading like, all right, this is this room, this is that room. You guys skipped all these rooms and you're over here, and up and down and up and down. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky.
It's
tricky.
It's pretty nuts.
Yeah, reading out of a book is very difficult if you're trying to run a game.
Yeah.
Unless you've read it yourself like a half a dozen times or
Right.
a dozen times.
Which I don't have the patience for.
Right. Most people don't. So it's hard. It's hard. And that was one of the things that kind of sucked about Adventure League too. Like, we're running out of a book, and the guy would be like, all right, will you go in this room? You don't go in the room, the door is locked.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh.
I'd rather just not be doing an adventure and have, the DM just be able to decide whether the door is locked or not.
Right. Like, I don't know. I write my own, so I'm running my own story. Like, I pepper in, I steal a lot of people's ideas as far as like, I just used Heart of Dragon Heist, the new one that came out.
Yeah.
I used a section of that. I stripped out all the names, put in my own names, and I fit it into my world. And I said, like, all this stuff is happening, right? Like, so I could use the module and use the framework.
Right.
I just cut out the parts that didn't make sense or didn't apply.
Right.
And I stuck in parts that that were distinctly my world,
Mhm.
right? And it went flawlessly. It went great.
Yeah.
I do that a lot. Like I was looking at Salt Marsh today, and I was like, well, they're going to be going to this area that's kind of like that. What's in there that I can scoop out?
Mhm.
And there were some ships and some coastal cities, and I was like, oh, well, I can use those. And there was some monsters in there. I was like, yeah, definitely gonna use those.
Yeah.
So beg, borrow, and steal when it comes to D&D. You can come up. If you're writing your own world, you're writing your own story. Take a lot of the stuff that's built and say, well, can I put this? Can I take Strahd or just one tiny piece of that and put it in my world and say, well, you've got to go through this town, but it has this haunted castle. Like, there's a, 5,000 gold to clear out the castle or whatever. Like, or, all the children keep disappearing at night. And only, a couple children every night disappear. But they're going, we know where they're going. We just can't get in.
Yeah.
Right. They're all in there.
Yeah.
Right. Some sort of hook, whatever it is.
Whatever it takes.
Big borrow and steal the different adventures, right? And you cut out the parts that don't make sense to this finite world in that adventure and piece it back together that works for you. That's what I do.
Right.
It works fairly well. Sometimes I'm like, all right, I really wish I wasn't doing this because like the only thing I don't like is the maps are predetermined.
Mm-hmm.
So when they go into this building, well, it's great. Every room is laid out and it tells you what's in there and this and that, but now I have to draw that building. And I can't use any of my regular, like my 3D terrain because I'm not, like, I don't have the design for this.
Yeah.
Right? Like.
You don't have time to make it.
Right. So you do end up with more, dry erase drawn things than you do kind of mix or are all 3D. So there's give and take in all of it, I guess.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. No. Definitely have fond memories of hanging and playing with you guys. But like at the time it was just driving me crazy. Couldn't deal.
The game was driving you crazy?
No. Just the drive and the late hours and the working 2 jobs and the whole shebang.
Yeah, that would do.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of jobs, you've had some pretty interesting ones.
Sure. I guess we can say that.
More or less.
I've had a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
I was in JCPenney the other day, and
that's where it all began.
Well, some of it began
for you and me. Anyway.
Yeah, and my son who's 6.5 was like, well, we have to go over here because what we need is over here. I was like, nope, it's over here. Go down here, take a right. And he's like, well, how do you know? I was like, well, I used to work here. And he's like, you used to work here? I said, yeah.
Said, what?
He goes, man, you've worked at a lot of places. Like, have you had a lot of jobs? And I was like, a fair amount, yeah. And he's like, wow. I think it like blew his mind that like you can like one person can have multiple jobs or do different things.
Like, I thought you were just a firefighter or just a policeman.
Right.
Like, I thought those were the only jobs you could have.
No, like I mean, his mother's a teacher, right?
Yeah.
And his grandmother's a teacher, and his grandfather was a teacher, and his like grandmother on my side, like my mother, kind of works. I don't even really know how to explain it. She does programming and things like that. So, but she works from home, right? And his grandfather worked for the DOT, right? Like, so either you're a teacher or I assume that he thinks that my mother doesn't actually work.
Okay.
Because like she works from home, so she never has to go to work. And whenever he's there, she doesn't work. Right. So like
conceptually, like there's
he
not
doesn't
really
work.
space.
Right? Yeah. So yeah, it was interesting to see his finite view on like jobs. Like, oh yeah, you have worked there and you worked there. And yeah, I've had a lot of different jobs. I think I figured like, let's see here. When I was in high school, junior high, I got my first job at 14. And God, I worked as like a janitor for a candy company in downtown Exeter.
All right.
And my job was to go after school and clean the chocolate room. So it was a cold room where they'd make chocolate things. They dip chocolate and then harden. Well, then chocolate gets everywhere, so somebody has to go in with like a
Like a spatula.
but like a spackling spatula,
Okay.
like a drywall spackling spatula.
Yeah.
So you go in with those, and you have to scrape up all the chocolate, and then you have to mop everything with super hot water because it's a cold room, and like as soon as it gets like hot, it freezes over. And yeah, that was terrible. So I worked at that, and then I got a job. At first I was like a dish boy, and then in a little cafe in downtown Exeter, the Green Bean, and I went from being a dish boy to being like one of the managers.
Yeah.
Just over the course of high school, I worked my way through different positions and ended up being like a night manager and like was responsible for like, counting out the till and locking up and like I was like, wow, that's kind of a good progression. And then when I graduated high school, I went in the Army, and I spent 3.5 years in active duty Army, where I was a cook. I was special. It was kind of the same thing I was doing at Green Bean. I had a few deployments with them. That was I went in 2002. Get out in 2006. So, kind of I did the same thing the whole way through. Just was a cook, and when I got out, I ended up being a line cook. Well, yeah, I was a line cook at Margarita's.
All right.
And that was terrible.
Okay.
I
can imagine.
Have you ever seen the movie Waiting? Highly recommend. But it's pretty accurate to being a line cook. Watch the movie, you'll understand.
All right.
Or YouTube parts of it, right? And you'll be like, oh God, yeah, no, I'm never eating at a restaurant again. But it was quite different from being in the military where everything was very rigid.
Yeah.
And everything was, things had to be done in a certain way every time. It was not that way in the civilian world. So I struggled at that job, mostly because I hated the people I worked with, because they were just terrible. I was like, you're terrible at what you're doing.
Yeah. So
I left that job. I was like, you know what? I'm good. I don't need this. Which was, I guess, hindsight too bad because they agreed to pay me $13 an hour starting, and then, which at the time people like the line cooks were making like $9.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, we want you to come work for us. I was like, they were like, we'll give you 9.5. I was like, no, I need 13. And they were like, well, and I was like, okay. So, in hindsight, that was a pretty good paycheck to give up.
If you could stomach it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, but God, what the hell did I do after that? Oh, I became like a handyman.
Yeah.
I got a job with an old family friend of ours who was a handyman, and I became like a handyman's apprentice.
Yeah.
Like we did everything from like we mowed lawns, we replaced screen doors, we fixed siding and trim, and like somebody needed some odd job done, we went and did it.
Yeah.
Mostly mowing, but odd jobs too. Painting, part of that was house painting.
Yeah.
So spent a good chunk of that summer up on a ladder, scraping a house, painting it, which was interesting because my father, before he went back to college in his late 40s to become a teacher, spent his summers painting houses with this guy.
Really?
And my sister, college breaks. My sister's 10 years older than I am. When she was in college, she'd come home in the summer and paint houses with this guy.
Yeah.
So like, it's been kind of like this family thing. Like we go and work with this guy and paint houses in the summer. So it was kind of a little family rite of passage, which was kind of nice. Like, he's a great guy and it was fun. He paid me under the table, which was nice. Which I totally paid my taxes on because that's the legal thing to do. But I don't know. It was tiring. It was just not. I went from being in the military where everything kind of had a purpose, or even if it didn't have a purpose, you kind of felt like it had a purpose, right? Yeah. You're part of a collective. You're part of the whole, right? Like what you're doing although you may be doing something mundane right now, as a whole, you're part of the military, you're part of the army, you're part of something that can make a difference and matter.
Yeah.
Like there's a mindset that comes with being, that gets drilled into you pretty hard, with being in the military, and then coming out and kind of going through the succession of like stupid, piddly ass little jobs. I was like, this fucking sucks. And I was trying to go back to school at the same time, like taking a couple courses, but I was never a good student to begin with. Like in high school, like I was a terrible student. So just randomly going to classes just was not working for me.
Right.
So I took a course and was like, yeah, I'm good with that. Like I'm gonna hold off, and ended up getting a job doing private security for the nuclear power plant.
Okay.
And so that was armed security. So you have to go through training and get certified and all this other stuff, and became an armed guard, right?
Yeah.
Working at the nuclear power plant over on the coast. And
I imagine being ex-military,
the training wasn't overly difficult.
Yeah.
It was most of the training was like, when can you shoot someone?
Oh, okay.
Like rules of force kind of stuff.
Sure.
Like there was no like physical training.
Yeah.
Like it was, you had to go qualify with your weapon and whatnot. So I had that job for about 2 years until 2008. I got married in May of 2008, and I lost that job in August of 2008, just as the recession hit.
Nice.
So my brother-in-law, who is like the shop manager for a local company that does they make brass and copper lanterns by hand. He was like, I can get you a job here. It's nothing special. It doesn't pay overly well, but I can get you a little bump, right? I can get you like maybe $10 an hour, $10.50, and which was like $2 more than all the other schlups that were working there.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need something. I was unemployed. I'd been unemployed for like 2 months at that point. So I got a job there, and I literally stood on a factory floor, concrete floor all day, using hand machinery.
Yeah.
It wasn't motorized or anything. You had to like bend the metal with the machine by hand. I spent from early October till December doing that. And I was like, I hate this. Like, I hate everything about this. Like, this is the worst possible existence that I could think of. Like, coming to work, stupid early in the morning, just stand on a concrete floor, fuck with this sharp ass metal all day for like nothing.
Right.
So I said, you know what? I said, I gotta go to college. Like, I gotta find another way out, right? Like, so at the time, that was leading into the 2008 elections. I got really into politics, right? I mean, there was nothing else to do, so I listened to politics. Like, I listened to podcasts, I listened to radio, I read a whole bunch, of stuff, and I got really into politics. And I was like, I fucking love this. This is great, right? So like, I was like, I'm gonna go back to school, but I can't go to the university. Like, I just am not ready for that. I don't like. It was way outside my ability at the time, and so I said, all right, well, I'm going to go to the community college. So I went and got my associate's degree from the community college. Some of the best years, couple of years there. Got to know some really amazing people. I got really involved in the school. Like, I became the president of the student body. I ended up becoming, I got selected. I guess we'll call it selected. I got selected to be the student representative to the governing body known as the Post-Secondary Education Commission.
Okay.
It's a statewide, it's now dissolved, it's something else now. It was a state commission, like the government appoints commissioners to this committee.
Yeah.
And they make policy for post-secondary education. So universities and community colleges. So they make all the policy that revolves around those entities.
Yeah.
So I got selected to do that while I was at the school. I was involved in as head of as the student government president. I was involved with policy decision making at the school. Got super involved. like ridiculously so. I spent even years after that. I was being used as part of their ad campaigns. I was in their magazines. I was in their commercials. I was everywhere.
Yeah. Be nice to get some dividends from that, but whatever.
Yeah, I don't know how much there would have been, but a couple bucks wouldn't hurt. But super involved. I got my associate's degree in American Studies and then went to UNH. It was, I was ready to go. I was like, all right, university, here we come. Was not involved at all in almost anything except for the College Republicans.
Okay.
I was involved with the College Republicans and did my last 2 years, got my political science degree, but my time with the College Republicans was more like I was more politically connected at that point, where people running for different offices or people in the state who wanted to get college kids involved would come to the College Republicans, which I became the president of at one point, because that's what I do. I have a horrible habit of joining organizations and going, "You're dumb. You don't know what you're doing," and that sounds terrible, and it makes me sound like a horrible, horrible human being. But I just look at what somebody generally. I'll look at something and go, "All right. I mean, you're doing a pretty good job, but here's how I would do it," or I just think, "Well, I can do that better. Let me try." Right? And because those kind of organizations have some turnover every year, there's usually an opening, so you get a good opportunity to do that. So kind of get to give it the old college try, as it were.
Yeah.
But it was good because I was very involved. I volunteered on, when was that? That was the 2012 election. I was really involved. I got to go to a lot of rallies and things, and got to know most of the people who were involved in politics in the state, in the Republican Party. So when I graduated, I had no job.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, well, I got to find something. So I tried to find a job in political science, which it was just after the election.
Yeah.
So there was nothing.
Right.
There was nothing available.
There are negative jobs in political science.
And I was like, oh my God, this was the worst time to graduate. I wish I graduated last year. And everything was ramping up to an election.
You would have been set.
Oh man. But so I ended up getting this job doing direct sales. Now, anybody who's ever done direct sales will agree with me that it's the worst thing in history. Okay. I'd rather go back to working on the factory floor.
Yeah.
But I did it because I was like, all right, well, there's potential for growth and whatever. So basically, my job was to stand in Sam's Club and hawk shit. So you stand there with your tchotchkes, and as people walk by, hey, come check this out. Hey, hold this. Hey, what are you doing? You want to check this out? You're the guy in the kiosk in the mall, and you walk by, and like three of them stare at you and hold things at you. That was me. And contradictory to my probably everything I've said before, I don't like to engage with people randomly. Like, I hated that job because I was like, well, if they're interested, they'll come over and talk to me. Right? Like, I'll be pleasant when they walk by. Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? Oh, have you seen this? Oh, yeah, that's cool.
That's my approach to retail.
But that's my, like, and they were like, no, you have to be, like, in their face. You have to, like, run around the store and you have to get people's interest. And I'm like, running around here like an asshat isn't going to get people to want to come over and check out this cleaner.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
you're just bothering people.
So I was the number 2 salesperson in that company. And I was terrible.
Yeah.
That should tell you the quality of the people that were working there. My boss pulled me in. It's this woman who was younger than me, which is fine. But she was in charge of this company because it was one of those, like, pyramid scheme company things. Okay. Like, you come in and, like, you'll grow this business, and then you'll grow people, and they'll grow a business. And yeah, it had a lot of red flags that I should have seen. But she's very nice, but she had no idea how to do any of which. Like, she was good at the sales part. She was not good at anything else.
Yeah.
So she's like, can I see you? And I was like, sure. So we go and we sit down in the little break room, and she goes, so I was looking at your numbers, and you're down. You're not doing real well. I said, yeah, it's been tough. I'm not really sure. I haven't really got my feet under me. She goes, well, you need to make a choice. You either need to choose to do better, or you need to choose to leave. And I went, I choose to leave. And you should have seen the color just ran from her face. She did not think that was what I was going to say.
Yeah.
She thought I was going to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to double down and I'm going to do so much better.
I'm going to do you proud, boss.
And I was like, you're right. I'm out. Went in, gathered my stuff. Right, and it was like, hey, everybody, it was nice working with you. Wow.
Your number 2 salesperson is peacing out.
Oh, the number 1 guy left a month later. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There you go.
So that was a horrible job. So then, God, what did I do after that? Oh, so then I was unemployed, and I was probably unemployed for like 2 months, a month and a half. And I was going to some kind of headhunter staffing companies and doing interviews and saying like, here I am, here's my skills, like find me help me find a job, right? Those kind of companies.
Yeah.
And so this was in Portsmouth, and I used to love to go to Barnes and Noble just to poke around. So I went over there just because I was like, it's the middle of the day and I ain't got shit else to do because I don't have a job. So I went in, and the guy who ran the store, Eric Abney, he lived in the same town that I lived in. And he and I had gotten to know each other because he ran for selectman when my dad ran for school board.
Okay.
So one day, election day, we stood together at the polls and just talked all day.
Yeah.
And he and I hit it off. He was in the Army in the 80s, and so we had a good connection there, and we just were very compatible, right? We had a great conversation. I was poking around, and I didn't realize he ran the store.
Right.
And I saw him, and I was like, oh, hey, how are you? And he's like, I'm doing really well. Like, what's going on? We stood and talked for like 20 minutes. And he's like, well, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm looking for a job. I was doing this thing and that and that. And he's like, weren't you a cook in the military? Like, do you have a lot of food service experience? I said, yeah. At the time, I was still in the National Guard. I was, I became an NCO, and I was in charge of people, and I was in charge of kitchens. And so I was like, yeah, I do this and that and whatever. And he's like, I got a job for you. He's like, I can't give it to you right now because I got to get the woman who's in that job out.
Yeah.
But I have a job for you. You want it? And I was like, tell me more. So he's like, well, I've got a cafe manager position that I want you to take.
Yeah.
But like I said, I can't give it to you now because I technically have one, but she's on her way out. So he's like, what I want you to do is talk to Susan, my number 2, and so Susan came out, and she was talking to me, and she's like, okay, great, yeah. So we're going to hire you as a lead cashier, which is like middle management there, basically. And through the holiday season, and then once we get rid of this woman, you can take that position. So I was like, all right. So I got hired to that job just randomly because of who I knew. And so I did that job, and then they finally got rid of the other woman, and they're like, all right, well, you're cafe manager now. And I didn't have to actually interview for that because when they went to go do it, the district manager was like, well, we have to interview. And Eric was like, I'm not interviewing anybody. I know who I'm going to hire. It's that guy. It's the guy I already hired.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay. So I just got the job. I was like, boom, done. I was like, all right, well, that makes my life a little easier.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how I got brought on to Barnes & Noble as well. Like, I did interview, obviously, but I think I was interviewing for, I think it was Cafe. Yeah. Like, you guys were hiring for Cafe, and I was like, I was picking up a second job, and interviewed with Susan, and, I think it was like, we hit it off, like, we did really well, but she's like, you seem like kind of a more easygoing type, like, not a particularly high energy. You seem like you're more of a stockroom kind of person. I'm like, yeah, no, that's fair. That's kind of what I do at my other job. And she's like, all right, well, if a stockroom position gets open, we'll keep you in mind. Get me your references, and we'll see what happens. And so I was like racking my brain about who I could get as references, because at the time JCPenney doesn't they don't allow their employees to do references. Like, they can do personal references, but they can't do business references. So I'm like, I mean, I've only had the one job. I don't have any, like, I don't have people that I can just, like, call up and be like, hey, we work together. Like, can you put in a good word for me?
Right.
So I'm like, can I use Brian? She's like, actually, it's funny you mentioned that because like I called her like a couple days later. She's like, it's funny you mentioned that. I talked to Brian and I was like, yeah, I've got this kid Gordon. He says he knows you, and you're like, yeah, I want him in the cafe.
Yeah. No, it's. I mean, when you know what you want, it's easy to get it.
Yeah.
It's funny. I didn't even mention that. So where we met was at JCPenney.
At
It was
JCPenney.
another job that I had.
Yeah.
Which was when I was at just in between community college and going to university. I worked at JCPenney. I got hired on. I went in randomly. Of course, I went in like a suit.
Yeah.
Because that's how you apply for jobs. And I was sitting at the computer putting things in, and one of the women came by and she was like, "You applying for a job?" And I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "I'll be right back." She goes away, and like 2 minutes later, she comes back with this other woman named Lori.
Yeah.
And I think Lori, right?
Yeah. Lori was a store manager.
Yeah. And she goes, "Oh, you're applying for a job?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, why?" I said, "I don't know, this, that, and the other thing." And she's like, "I have a perfect job for you. Like, I don't want you to be an associate. I want you to be a customer relations person."
Okay.
So I originally got hired. My job was to go around and just engage with customers.
Interesting.
Like, I didn't have to do anything else. Just walk around. I carry the little bags, right, that they want people to use to carry clothes and stuff. I don't even know if they still use those.
I think they're on carts now.
Yeah.
I think they finally gave up the ghost and got carts.
Right. My job is to walk around with little bags and say, "Hey, how are you? Can I help you find anything? I hope you have a great experience today." That was it.
Yeah.
She was like, "You're like perfect for that." My first freaking month, I got Employee of the Month. She was like, "Yeah, like you get and of course their way that they did it was you got nominated by somebody in the store, and then it like all those names got put in a hat, and then they pick one."
Yeah.
And my first month there, I got Employee of the Month. I was like, "Oh, that's a really low bar you guys are setting."
Pretty low bar.
Yeah. So, but then they did that for the first little while, and then that was for like peak season and certain things, and then I went over to shoes.
Yeah.
Because they were like, "Well, you can go over here and make commission." And I was like, "Well, I like to make commission and I can talk to people." So I did that for a little while, and I think I left that job. Why did I leave that job?
I mean, they were kind of giving you a hard time and not giving you breaks and shit, right?
I
mean, that was also like holiday season.
Yeah, they were being kind of dickish. I think I just got tired of it, and I was like, "Yeah, whatever. I don't need this." And I think things were getting more difficult at school, so I was like, "Whatever." Yeah. At the same time, I worked at Great Bay Community College after I graduated as like I did data entry, and I was the receptionist at the front door.
Okay.
Like, so God, I totally forgot about that. So I did those things kind of at the same time.
Down the middle.
And then I ended up stopping because, I left JCPenney to go do that job.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And then I left that job because school was getting like crazy. And I was like, I can't do both. I have to focus. So, yeah. Forgot about that little in-between period there. And then, so I finished with the direct sales job. Went to Barnes. I worked there for a few years, a year and a half, maybe, a little over a year and a half. And then when I was working at Barnes & Noble, I was still really into politics, and I said, "You know what? I'm going to run for office. I'm going to be a state rep." I ran for office. I got elected, right? And I was like, all right, well, now I'm going to be a state rep and a Barnes & Noble manager, right?
Yeah.
Like, my life is going to be busy.
Yeah,
for sure. And then, so after the election, I got elected. I got a call from an old contact of mine from when I was in college who was involved in the political world, and he said, "Look, you know this guy, he just got elected to Congress. He's looking to put his team together, and they were looking for names for people to do veteran services, and I put your name in. If you get a call, it's for that."
Yeah. And
I was like, "That's amazing, right?" Well, I got a call like 2 hours later, and the guy's like, "Hey, I want you to come in. We were looking for someone to do veteran services for the congressman here in the state." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm in. Like, this is everything I wanted." So I went in, and they were like, "All right, well, you'll have to resign your House seat. if you want the job because we don't want any conflicts of interest. And I was like, keep the state rep job that doesn't pay anything, or go to the congressional side, the federal side that pays a salary and like a whole job. It's like a thing. And I was like, God, I really want to be the state rep. I'm really poor.
Yeah.
And this is going to pay me a little bit more.
Yep.
And it's in the field that I want to be in. Right? It's like not a toe, it's like full body into the pool. Like, so I pulled the trigger and I resigned and took that job, and it ended up being the worst decision of my life.
Okay.
Honestly, probably one of the worst decisions of my life. That job was horrible.
Really?
Oh yeah. Absolutely 100% the worst job I've ever had. The people I worked for were completely oblivious as to how to manage people. They were completely oblivious to the fact that people that aren't them need a livable wage.
Yeah.
And they refuse. Whatever money I got when I started, it was like $30,000. And that was it. Never got a raise or anything. Even though I was promised a raise when I got hired. They said, well, we're going to start you here. We're going to figure out the budget and then we'll give people raises. Nobody got a raise. And then they were just like, oh, well, you need to like work all the time. Like you always need to be working. Even when you're not at work, you need to be working.
Yeah.
And so it just took a toll. And then the guy I worked for ended up having a scandal, a financial scandal
of all things.
And nobody would talk to us. Nobody wanted to come within 100 yards of us. Like, I couldn't set up any meetings.
Yeah.
Nobody would meet with me. Nobody would call us. Nobody would look for us to help them with anything. We were like persona non grata. We were blacklisted. Yeah. Nobody would talk to us. And I was like, I need out. Well, people started leaving like crazy. And I couldn't find a way out. There was nobody was taking on people, right? Like, I left the Barnes job, like, they had a new manager. Like, I couldn't go back there. I was like, well, do I go to unemployment? You know, I got a kid. I just bought a house. When I was working at Barnes & Noble, I bought a house. Yeah. So it's like, I got a mortgage I got to pay. Like, I can't just go unemployed now. Like, I was like, I guess I'm here, right? Like, I spent 9 months at my desk watching YouTube, doing nothing else.
I think I remember that, because we were playing D&D together at the time, right?
That was 2015.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, because Critical Role was in full swing.
Yeah.
And, like, I think you got me into it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because I started watching it at that job.
Right.
Sitting at my desk watching.
Because you had
watching
hours
like
a day.
40 back episodes of Critical Role. Anybody who's watched that knows that that's a lot of hours.
That's a lot of hours. It's a long ass time.
Right. I definitely had all my Netflix up to date.
Yep.
But I just wallowed away at that job. There was nothing. I couldn't get out. I was just stuck in like purgatory. And then he lost his election. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
So I was out of a job. Well, while I was running for office, I met a guy who was a selectman in my town when I went to go introduce myself to the selectman. He ran a small company in town. He had just started a product he invented. And over the next few years, I would meet up with him occasionally and check in. Hey, how's the business? Let's get breakfast. Like, get some coffee, right? We'll talk. How's business going? This and that. And he was like, no, I'm really, like, just swamped. Like, there's so much more work to do than I can do myself. And I said, well, I'm out of a job. Like, I'll come work for you. Like, can you hire me? And he was like, well, maybe, I don't know, do a business proposal. What would you add to the business and this and that? So I did that and went through that whole rigmarole, and they ended up hiring me to work for this company, Gentent, that I still work for now. And 2 weeks into that job, I ended up getting meningitis and went into a coma.
Damn. I had no idea.
Yeah. So I spent a week in a coma, because I had severe brain, like temperature.
Okay.
So I had an ear infection that when an ear infection normally erupts or bursts, it comes out your ear. That's why you get that like pus, and that's why you always have to clean your ear.
Mm.
This one burst into my inner ear, and all of that infection went. Well, once you're in there, you're pretty much in the brain.
Yeah.
So that's when it's called meningitis, and that inflamed my spinal column and my brain swelled. And so anyway, so barely made it to the hospital before I died.
Yeah.
I was in a coma for 6 days, and I just started this new job, and I was like, so I remember going to, like, I remember being in the hospital room, and then I woke up in a different hospital room. And I turned to my wife and I said, what time is it? And they were like, oh my God. They were like, it's noon. And I panicked. I was like, noon? Like, I gotta call my boss. I was supposed to be at work at 8:30. And my wife goes, that was 6 days ago. I took care of it. My wife, who loves me to death,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, was like, in that moment, was like, you're alive? I am so fucking mad at you right now. So it took me another 2 weeks to get out of the hospital to recover, because of brain damage.
Yeah.
So like I had to learn, like I didn't have to learn how to do things again. I just had to learn how to think again. Like my wife was doing simple math questions with me, like what's 17 plus 17? And I was like, some numbers, I don't know. Like I couldn't do it. I couldn't think of it. Right? She's like, well, what's 10 plus 7? And I'm like, 17, I think. Like I had to like think about it, like put it all together, and it was
had to kind of rewire yourself.
yeah,
almost.
yeah. So, although I was thinking about trying something new, meningitis and brain damage is not the thing to do. Because that was in 2017, January 2017, and I still have effects of it now, and it's actually starting to get a little bit worse. Where I have a hard time focusing.
Okay.
And remembering. Like I can't remember things anymore.
That's
like
great.
Maybe it's not memory. It's quick recall.
Okay.
Like I have a very hard time doing a thing that I used to love to do is debate. Right? Like you have an opinion, I have an opinion. Let's have a conversation about it. Well, it's a conversation that's kind of counterpoint, and like, all right, well, you believe this. Well, I believe this because X, Y, and Z. Can't do that anymore. I can't pull the information. Like if you're like, I believe that our government should do X, Y, and Z because of this, this, and this, I'm like, give me 30 minutes. I got to go write this down because I can't process it quick enough. Right? So that's interesting. So I spent, and then I went back to work like part-time for 2 weeks. So in the first month that I was there, I burned a year's worth of sick time and vacation time. So that was awesome.
Yeah.
But he was very nice. He front loaded all, and so it was nice that he was concerned. He didn't kind of leave me out in the wings there. But that was interesting. So,
not the way you want to start off here.
No, but it's been good. I'm like I said, I started in January 2017, so I'm in my third year, right? Yeah, third year. In my third year, just been there over 2 years. So
yeah.
Life is good. Business is growing. Despite my handicaps now, I'm still able to, have conversations with people and meet new people and have, it takes a lot more prep, to know what I'm going to say and what thing people might possibly say and have answers ready for them. But, I still get to get out and talk to people and do business deals and, trying to work with companies like Caterpillar and Yamaha, like these billion-dollar companies.
Right.
There's little old me like, hey guys, let me sell you some product. Let me tell you why it's a good deal. So it's kind of fun. It's interesting. It's nice to see a small company start to grow and really get legs.
Yeah, kind of make it.
Yeah, you get to the things that you do on a day-to-day basis have a significant difference on the business. So that's nice. That's rewarding.
Right. When you come from a place like you're talking about the military, where like the day-to-day might not matter, but the feeling that you were part of something bigger is kind of what sustained you. And then working in retail, where like, you're part of the store environment, and like you had your individual encounters, but like it didn't really feel like you were like making a difference.
Yeah. I
on
can
the
make
whole.
in retail you can make a difference to an individual customer.
Yeah.
And you can maybe make it into a difference in your department. Maybe
If you're lucky
if you're lucky.
and good.
But being in retail, you have no chance in making a difference in the store policy or the corporate policy. Like corporate, you might as well just go hang yourself. Like there's no help. There's no chance you're going to do it, right? So it is nice to, I work directly for the guy who invented the product and owns the company, right? And I've changed that company a few different times now just by saying, hey, what do you think about doing this instead of this? And he's like, I like that. Do it. Like, so we totally fundamentally changed something we're doing in the business because it was, well, what do you think? Okay, that's a good idea. Well, give me some more data. Okay, here's the data. Well, the data proves it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, do it. Right? Like, where in retail, if you're like, hey, I don't think that this is the right way to do this. Can I get some data to prove this or disprove it?
Yeah.
Like, they'd be like, no. Go back to, like, go help someone.
Yeah.
Like,
it's store policy. Don't worry about it.
Right. Oh, yeah, the catch-all. It's store policy. Yeah. So, yeah, a lot of jobs in my life. But I think that even the shitty ones, I think, have been good. It's given me quite the broad view on life. And it's given me a lot of experience to be able to bring forward to the next thing, which is nice.
So slight tangent. I promise it's gonna pan out. I've been listening to this podcast with this guy Jocko Willing. He's like a former Navy SEAL, and he talks about like discipline and leadership, and like he'll do these book reviews where he's reading like firsthand accounts of wars and such. And he talks a lot about leadership and like taking ownership of situations, like responsibility essentially, and making sure that you're taking care of your guys. And a lot of what he's saying, like I didn't realize it at the time, but working for you, like I noticed a lot of like similar things, because like I remember like one thing that you said when we were working at Barnes & Noble together was, well, a couple of things. One thing was that you worked on the schedules at home, because like when you were in the store, you wanted to be, working and like doing, like working with us, and like making sure everything was getting done. So like the only time you really had, like you didn't want to be stuck in an office working on it. So like you would go home and make sure the schedules are functioning, and that you also went to bat for us for hours, like especially in the leading times of the year. Like you would really like push to get more coverage in the cafe because of how miserable it was to be up there by yourself.
Yeah.
And really taking care of your people that way. And I just in retrospect, I really appreciate the effort that you put in. Just being a manager.
Yeah.
That being a manager I could look up to, I guess.
I appreciate that. No, it means a lot to me, and I appreciate that. It's the way that, luckily, I had people when I was, in the military, and I was a young private, and I had people ahead of me who kind of did the same thing for me. And the idea of, I think there's a book now called Leaders Eat Last.
Okay.
I think maybe I'm just making that up.
I mean, it sounds good.
If there's not, I'm going to write a book that's called Leaders Eat Last, so buy it on Amazon.
Yeah.
But it's the idea that, and as a cook, it really that to me strikes home, because as a cook, you eat last.
Yeah.
Right. And I, as like the manager of the cooks, right? It was the NCO. I ate last of the last. Right. All the soldiers that we're supposed to feed come in and we feed them, and then we eat last. Right, as the cooks. Right. We eat what's ever left. Right. But I put my soldiers, the people who work for me, I put them in line and say, now you eat. And whatever's left, I'll eat. Right? And usually your soldiers would leave you something.
Yeah.
Every once in a while they forget, but for the most part. But I used to, when I was in the Guard, this happened to me all the time in the Guard, because I was only an E5. I was like total middle management. But I worked in a place that had some people much higher than I did. And they would come in, and they were the leaders of all the people that we just fed. And they would wait for all their soldiers to eat.
Yeah.
And they would stand there at the beginning of the chow line, and they'd wait for my soldiers to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And then myself and like the officer, the colonel, would stand there and we'd bicker with each other, in good fun, like, no, you eat first. No, I'll eat last. No, I'll eat last. Because some of them didn't do that. Some of them were like, they'd eat after their soldiers, but they'd eat before we did.
Yeah.
But some of the really good ones would sit, like, I would bicker with and be like, no, I'll eat last. No, like, oh, you ate last time. I'll eat last. And that's, to me, that's really important to building a relationship with the people that work for you, is when they know that you're going to have their interests in mind, instead of just because you're already above them.
Yeah.
Right? You're already a manager. You're already the boss. You already make more. You already have better benefits. You have a better office. You have a better chair. And you have, right? It goes for, if you work in an office or you're in the military or whatever, you as the supervisor already have the better situation than the guy under you, right? And now if you don't at some point think of that guy's welfare, all you're doing is just shitting on him for no reason.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make any sense that, well, I'm in a better position than you, so I'm going to treat you lousily.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that guy's already got a worse position than you.
Yeah.
Like, but when you're down there, right, if you're the guy who's got a boss and your boss thinks of you in even the most simplest ways, like your boss sees you're tired, brings you a coffee, right? He may not have bought the coffee. Maybe he just went to the coffee pot in the break room and poured you a cup of coffee and brought it to you.
Yeah.
Right? And he says, hey, how are we doing? What are we looking like? Right? Like, where are we at? Right? And then how are you doing? Right? How's your family? How's this? How's that? Like, did you see this movie? Right? You humanize people.
Yeah.
And it makes a world of difference in the relationship you have with that person, so that when the inevitable comes up that you need something done right away, or you need someone to work extra hours, or you can't be there to do a thing, somebody's there to do it for you, to help you out, to be there, to do the extra hours. They don't do it all the time.
Yeah.
But they'll do it, and they'll generally do it happily for you, right? Not because they want to please anybody, but you've built a rapport with somebody, right? You may not be friends, right? You may not you don't come over every weekend for dinner with my family, but you're friendly. You are friends with that person where hey, I need you to can you help me out? Can you do this? Can you help me do this? And they'll generally say, yeah, I'll do that, right? And it's that idea of, leaders eat last, right? It's that little thing of saying, yeah, everybody's eating and there may not be a full meal, right? I'm only going to get a partial meal, right? But you guys got your whole meal.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm taking care of my boys.
Right. I got mine already, right? And if I'm still hungry, whatever, I'll go eat. I'll go back up and get the same thing again. I don't know. That's a small thing that I learned in the military, is just help the people underneath you. You don't have to be the super benevolent guy who lets their people get away with anything they want.
Yeah.
But
because that doesn't help them.
That doesn't help anybody. But if you're able to say to give them some sense of equalness or some sense of caring, it's unbelievably helpful. So
yeah, I think
I'm glad that some of the things that I do are, some of the things that the guy talks about in his podcaster, that you resonate with, and that the things that I did actually made sense.
Yeah.
That's nice.
No, definitely in retrospect, it's one of those things where I can be pretty oblivious and just kind of really narrowly focused. And so I think that was a scenario, but a couple of things stuck in that. And then I think also the contrast of our next supervisor kind of put that into sharp relief. It's like, well, I didn't really have anything to compare it to because, it was just Brian was the cafe supervisor, and then
Right.
Chandra was trying to do it. I think I might have told you this comparison when we got our new one, and we were having all these issues because people were like really antsy, and like things were a changeover. I came up with this analogy. I might have told you. I don't know if I did, but I basically compared it to like a family where you were the dad, and then Chandra was the stepmom, and then the dad died.
The stepmom got
And the stepmom
stepdad.
had to like the stepmom had to like deal with all these kids that were like, you're not my real mom. But then like she was married to the dad, and like we were kind of okay. But then like the new stepdad came in, and we were all just like, we were like kind of okay with stepmom. We didn't fuck with stepdad at all,
You know what? Fuck that guy.
basically.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
so
hilarious.
it was a real trip.
Yeah, well, I think there was only one person that was, I don't even know if there was one person left anymore that was there before I took over.
Mhm.
I think just Jake,
Yeah,
but he doesn't really count because he was kind of afloat.
Yeah.
Um,
he was not. Yeah, I think he's still working in Barcelona, but he's not in the cafe really anymore.
but I think all of those people I hired.
Because it started
So they
off
were
with Bailey and Will and Audrey and
Oh yeah.
shoot.
Was Audrey still there? She left.
Oh, she left. Yeah, she left before you did, I think.
Yeah.
She did pretty early on.
God.
What
What did you do with the names? I can't remember.
Yeah, and
And
then
then there was Alex and
Alex Hunt,
yeah,
my boy,
you and Eric and
and John, or sorry, Peter. His actual name is John, but he was.
oh right. Oh God, yeah.
And then Becca.
Oh yeah. There was my one foul.
Yeah,
Susan never let me forget that one either.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, she ended up being not so bad in the long run.
Yeah, I think
She was one of those slow plotters, like
right. She's very measured, and she has to do things like a specific way.
Yeah.
And like I think part of it was that she might have gotten hired like late in the Christmas season or something, where like you didn't have time to like really go over the training like you did with the rest of us.
Yeah.
And so she was just stuck playing catch up.
Yeah.
For a really long time, and then Dave spent a lot of time
elsewhere.
elsewhere, out back. That was.
Yeah, I never understood. I always heard that he was never there. It
Yeah.
was like back to the cafe manager before me.
We didn't really know like what he was doing.
Like, what are you like? Like, I didn't drop the ball that hard with the paperwork that like he needed to be back there all the time. Like the paperwork was stupid easy.
Yeah.
Like it didn't take long at all to do it. That's why I was always in the cafe.
Yeah. I don't recall like specifically what. Like we never knew. We were just kind of like, no, Dave is somewhere else.
Somewhere else. Yeah, I did hear that complaint a lot after I left, and I felt bad because I was like again, Barnes is a good place to work for the most part.
Yeah.
But they don't pay very well, right? So like, I was paying people like $8.50.
Yeah.
To do like the hardest job in the store, right? Like it's not that difficult, but it is probably the hardest job in the store because the people you got to work with, and then you do the equipment you have to work with, and like you're always kind of hustling in that job.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you're on the book floor, like you're like, all right, well let me walk over here, look at this bookshelf. No, okay.
Make sure it's straight.
Right. Like I gotta go to the register and
advertise it.
Right. Like that was stupid easy. I don't know how people can fuck that up. But they pay like crap. Like $8.50 an hour in what was this, 2013?
Yeah.
Like it was total crap.
I think I was making $9.30 by the time I left.
And I, speaking of fighting for people, when I hired you, I had to fight them to pay you the max that I could,
Hmm.
which was still like only $8.50.
Yeah.
Like, because they wanted to start you at $8, and I was like, no, I know, like, no, we need to pay Gordon better. Like, well, he's new, he's only had one job before, he doesn't have a lot of experience.
Hmm.
And I was like, no. And of course, I put it into the computer.
Yeah.
So I was like, $8.50, like, done. Like, and I did it pretty much everybody like that, except for like that guy. I think I started lower. She didn't have an experience.
Right.
But in that case with Dave, like what I was just talking about, you guys are already like, I was making a salary for that job. I made enough to buy a house, and you guys are making $8.50 an hour, $9 an hour.
Yeah.
Like, why do I need to be the dick who's never there, never helpful, always in the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
That just shits on the people that work for me.
Right.
Like, I mean, he's not out there like degrading people. I mean, he might have been, I don't know. But like he's not that kind of shitting on people. It's just absence, right? Your absence is shitting on those people. It's disrespectful to expect them to work stupid hard. You want them to work far harder than you work for far less.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's just stupid.
And
like
the real kicker was that because he didn't spend that much time on the floor, he didn't have the muscle memory of being able to do the job.
So when he did try to jump in, he was in the way.
That, or like when he tried to train people, like he didn't have like he didn't have a real grasp of it, so it wasn't what it could be.
Yeah, no, that's just terrible. That's the difference between, you know, you see the cliche difference between a boss and a leader.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's a boss.
Yeah.
You know? He's a go there, go do this, right? But when the push comes to shove, you really wouldn't want him there leading the way,
right? Because
you're like, no, I think I can do this better.
Yeah, it's like,
right. Like, that goes back to what I said all the way at the beginning. Like, I think I could do this better, right? Like, I'm good. No. Yeah, it's too bad. It's something that I always try, you know, in those jobs, talking to people. I try to explain things to people the way I see them, and you know, I am glad that some of it stuck, and hopefully it stuck with more people than just you.
Yeah, no, I think I can safely speak for them and say that we definitely felt, you know, we felt the loss.
Yeah.
When you had to move on. But.
Yeah. Well, that's nice. Makes me feel honored. Nice. Yeah. All right. Well, I need some dinner.
Yeah. We've been going for about 2 hours, so.
Jesus.
Yeah. But no, thanks for coming on, man.
No, I appreciate it. It was good to see you.
Yeah.
And we'll have to make sure that it's sooner than a few years.
Yeah. I think the last time was either had a birthday party or it was Extra Life of like 2 years ago.
Oh, it might have been Extra Life.
Yeah.
You know what we'll have to do is we'll have to have you come in and play a one-shot character.
Yeah, for sure.
You want to play one of the bad guys?
Absolutely.
That'd be great.
I'll do that.
I'd be like, and here's your evil bad guy, Gordon.
Surprise!
Gordon's like, hey guys. No, Gordon. More evil. Right. Yeah, no, that'd be fun. Have you come in. Either way, good guy, bad guy. Helpful, not helpful.
For sure.
I've got a crazy gnome you can play. How's your improving drug use?
I'll have to dust off my theater background for that one. But see what I can do.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and
yeah,
hopefully some of the weird ramblings out of my face hole make a difference. So,
yeah, I think it will.
Thanks, man.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.